Today I'm reading magician poems inspired by the art from several different tarot decks, and I want to start with a deck. It's the Tarot of the Animal Lords, and it's actually a deck that's out of print now, but it's a deck that I just adored. This is called The Fox. What is he doing, this fox, playing the shell game? One hand lifted to reveal a stone, the other ready to mix it up. He's working hard to con this red bird looking on, this mouse in red hat and brown jacket, paws crossed behind his back. There are better things to do on this huge mushroom he's using for a table. Where are his tools? There are medicine plants all around. He hasn't figured out what real magic is. So I want to talk a little bit about the card and how amazing I find it, because the original card apparently in the tarot was the juggler. And so it was actually that kind of a sort of performance magician, not necessarily the image we know from the Rider-Waite-Smith, Pamela Smith's edition, where we see the image of the magician with one hand pointing to sky and one pointing to earth in that particular stance, with his tools on the table. So the first thing I noticed, of course, is that there are no tools on this table. This magician does not have access to those. On the other hand, I love that the fox was chosen for this, because the fox is a trickster character in so many different folk traditions. So, and I love that, there's this this difference between what sometimes as children, especially, we think magic is, which is tricks, and what we're really talking about in the magician card. So this is the first card that I wanted to talk about. And I just absolutely love also the wonderful, the painting, the coloring of the card. I think it has a wonderful feeling to it. The fact that the fox is dressed up like a huckster, like a con man, and the guy who's looking on, totally ready to believe and thinks that he's going to be able to win the shell game, which notoriously is a game that very few people can ever win. So it's an interesting, I thought, beginning, an interesting take on that, which I'm not sure if I got this in a reading what I would think, but I wouldn't think, oh, I have a certain amount of power here. I would be like, be on the lookout. Something is a little bit shady. The next card I want to look at is the Magician card from the Nigel Jackson Tarot. Nigel Jackson was inspired by the older decks, in which the magician was actually shown as a juggler, le jongleur, in the earliest decks. And you can see in this image of the juggler with the big wide hat and the blue cape, juggling the three balls. So he's still showing that original card. But there's this really strange little detail on the card that you can look at, which is the snake right under the table. So I want to read the poem for you that was inspired by this. The Juggler. The man in the wide-brimmed blue hat should be stretching from earth to sky, but instead he's juggling. He's juggling in his long blue robe, shot through with gold threads, his orange scarf around his neck. He's juggling next to the table, its edges curling like an opening scroll. The table set with 4 cards and a die, a white cup, a book, a wand. 2 candles burn on the red dais, and he's still juggling little white balls. Curled around the leg of the table, the gold snake, ready to strike. So one of the things I really love about this is that the tools are there, but he's not quite sure, I think, what to do with them. So he continues this juggling, and that snake ready to strike, but also somehow connected with the goddess, with that kind of energy. There's some kind of magic there. But this juggler doesn't, to me, feel quite as competent as he could. There's still an element here of the entertainer, and also sort of having a lot of things in the air and not being quite sure what to do with these tools. If you notice, he is not in the Rider-Waite-Smith stance where he's connecting earth to sky. So he's not in that power stance. But on the other hand, there is this aura that is around him of magic somehow. So I found this a very interesting image. Look now at the next card from the Anna Kay Tarot. And this is a little bit of a development. I love it because there is still juggling going on. So she's done an interesting thing where she's somewhere in between the power stance on the Rider-Waite-Smith deck and that juggler. But what this magician is juggling is the galaxy, or a galaxy itself. And one hand is actually higher than the other hand, which is reaching for the tools. The tools are very specifically the sword, the wand, the cup, and the pentacle on the table. So we get both a sense of the activity that the juggler did, but how much more amazing to be juggling a galaxy than the three balls, and to somehow now have access to the tools. So this is the juggler, and I call this one the galaxy. Both the juggler and the magician kind of come together in this card. Galaxy. He's having fun with this swirling galaxy. He's tossed into the air. His voluminous robes and turban are bold blues in the darkness of night, or temple, or secret room beneath his basement. Vines climb the silvery column behind him. He reaches for the cup on the square marble table, next to the crossed sword and wand. Beside them, the dish of stars. I always love that about the pentacle, being a star, but encircled. And so when you put it on the table like that, I mean, I don't have a pentacle like that. And I was just thinking that I do need to have one. And it's interesting that, like, when I wrote the poem, I'm seeing him not just reaching for the tools, but reaching specifically for the cup, which is what I guess it looked like to me, and kind of looks like. And I like that because the cups, of course, are about emotion and feeling. And so this is not just an intellectual exercise. This is not just an alchemist or somebody who is, mathematically, analytically involved in magic. There is that emotional dimension to it, which I think for real magic is also part of the driving force. We dig deep into that emotional place that is so connected to our spirituality. So for the kind of magic that the Fool is going on, he needs access to his emotions as well as to the other tools represent the sword, representing his mind, and the passion of the wands, and the groundedness of the pentacle. So I think that Anna Kay did just a really great job of somehow taking that older tradition of the juggler and putting it together with the Rider-Waite-Smith magician. Well, I have one more juggler. This is a new deck for me, and I didn't realize that this had such an amazing magician card. So I wanted to talk about it a little bit because I was immediately drawn to it. And I was drawn to it sort of in the way as if I were a child, and this is the first time I had seen someone doing this kind of magic. I also love this card because this is a deck that has some diversity. This is a dark-skinned person, so it's so welcome to see that in a deck that is primarily RWS inspired, but has some other aspects to it. So as you can see in this card, we have the Magician again. This isn't a galaxy, this is the solar system. So the balls are all different sizes, and of course, if you've ever juggled, you know that if things are of different sizes, they're much more difficult to control than if they're of the same size and weight. I like also that his magician hat is kind of crumpled. I don't know, that just makes him feel much more approachable. Also, there's this blue robe that matches that he has on, but underneath it you can see that he has like just a regular like suit jacket or something, and that kind of struck me. So I'd like to read the poem, then we'll talk about it a little bit more. And this poem, as I said earlier, I somehow was speaking in the voice of a younger person, a child perhaps, or an adult who just is in that childlike place, and is called At First Sight. I love him at first sight. I am fascinated by his juggling all different sizes and colors of balls, some with rings, some flicker. I blink. I've seen these before. The stars and planets and that vast sun. His blue hat is crumpled and wizardly, and he's put a blue robe over his suit like a judge or a priest. I recognize things on the table, the 3 inverted cups, dice, cards, but some are new to me. A wand, a blade, a chalice, a star on a gold coin. I want to touch them. Someone, maybe my grandmother, has embroidered the bottom edge of the tablecloth with red roses and white lilies. I want to know this juggler. I want to be him. So one of the things that can happen when you're a poet is you can bring yourself in as a child. You can speak in the voice of yourself or of anybody or anything in the card. And in this one, all I could think of with this tablecloth, which is a very plain tablecloth, except that it's embroidered all around the lower edge. And that just reminded me of my grandmother and her generation, how they would embroider tablecloths and other kinds of linens that you would have around the home. But I want to say also that there's this interesting thing, and it actually didn't get in the poem, and that's this bag. There's this huge bag on the side, and this actually brought to mind an entirely different thing, which is a story. It's by Beth Brandt, and it's called This Place. It's about a Mohawk man who's gay, who left the res because he felt that it would be too hard for him to be a gay person there. And he comes back home, and he's dying. And his mother calls him the Medicine Man. This, by the way, is found in a collection called A Generous Spirit, selected work by Beth Brandt, edited by Janice Gould, and I will have that listed below. Anyway, it turns out the Medicine Man shows up. He does all the things and has all the things, but in a very different way. And the first thing, of course, that he notices is that the Medicine Man is wearing earrings. It turns out the Medicine Man is also a gay man, which has often been the case. But a lot of our young people don't know that or didn't know that. And so they go off to the city because they think they can find a community there of LGBTQ people. And they can. But those folks only get them partly also because they don't get the tribal thing at all. So there's no place where they feel totally at home. So anyway, he's come home to die. And one thing you may be familiar with is that medicine people have medicine bags, and often they are little bags. They're made of some kind of leather. They're pouches. Sometimes they're worn around the neck. The medicine man in Beth Brant's story shows up with a grocery bag, and that's only the beginning. It is a story that is so funny and so tragic and so touching all at once. If you haven't read Beth Brant, I want to recommend her wholeheartedly. But anyway, when I saw this bag on the side, I thought he's got his medicine bag. So he's juggling these planets almost nonchalantly, as if it's just something, to pass the time. You know that he knows how to do tricks because he's got the three little cups there for the shell game. He's got dice. He's got cards. And the cards are the same blue as his hat and the Earth planet and his robe. So partly I think, oh, well, those are tarot cards, which can be used in a divinatory way. But cards can also just be used for gambling, which is very popular in the world in general and in the native world. So just seeing those going, yep, that aspect of the magician, of the trickster, is there. But there's also these other things on the table. The blade, in this case, it's the two-sided knife, but the pentacle, and instead of just the three little cups on the side there, you've got this big chalice, and you have a wand. So you have the four tools that go with the tarot, the different suits of the tarot. But I do love it that his tools are not restricted to the tools of the tarot. He has a whole bag, a whole medicine bag, if I want to look at it that way, full of things that may or may not have power in different situations. So this thing he's doing, which is reminiscent, of course, of the Anna Kay galaxy, is very different. And there is no snake here. That's just not part of the thing. This is not that coming from that place. Instead, what there is this band of red roses and white lilies of the passion and the purity. So this magician is someone, he can do tricks for you if that's all you want. But if you want more, he's got more. And he's got things in that bag that you might need that you don't even know what they are. I like his eyes. They see you, but they are not threatening. They are not piercing. They are compassionate. And so this magician feels to me like a medicine person, that this magician feels healing. Yes, he can do this. He can juggle the planets, which is amazing. But for him, this is just an easy thing to do. This is an easy way to use the energy. And these games, that's easy stuff. But those four provocative tools of the four directions, of the four elements are there. And then this very mysterious bag that I'm sure has all kinds of tools that he can use. So I wanted to share that with you. And also, the thing that came to me that I do have in the poem in this card is, I, first of all, I want to touch those tools. It's the person in the poem, the young person, um, isn't familiar with those. Those are new. Um, and she wants to touch them. And then she says, I want to know this juggler, you know. And then finally, I want to be this juggler. And so important, going from the fool to the magician. Yes, you need to get to know the magician, but even more important, you need to learn how to be the magician in order to make the fool's journey. Um, and that seems to open this up and say, wow, there's so many traditions that are not included in this magician card. Um, I'm not going to show what they are. I'm not going to appropriate things, but I'm going to put a bag there. There's a bag, you know, which in European terms, again, would be like sort of his bag of tricks, but in other traditions would be the medicine bag. And I just love it that it's just this big sack that's mysterious and wonderful. So that's my take on the magician from the Good Fortune Tarot. Um, and we'll go on to some other magicians now. We're going to go now to the Cat Tarot. There's a number of different cat tarots. This one is the one that illustrated by Megan Lynn Cott. And um, this is another, I never thought actually that I would be writing from the Cat Tarot, but I ended up writing quite a few poems from the Cat Tarot. I do love cats, but also because they so captured the essence of some part of the magician. You can see this cat has his paw extended to the sky, as the magician does in the RWS card. And you can see also in his toys down at the bottom that they consist of the tools that you would have on the magician's table. There's also, we didn't talk about this in the other one, but in the Rider-Waite-Smith deck, of course, you have the infinity sign over the head of the cat, the Lemniscate. And in this, it is missing actually in the one with that we just looked at, the Anna Kay. There's no Lemniscate there. There's no Lemniscate in the Nigel Jackson juggler card either. But this one has the Lemniscate, and what I love about it is that this is what the cat seems to be reaching for. So we all know cats are smarter and have all kinds of knowledge that I wish that I had access to sometimes. But I saw that infinity sign above his head is something he'd be reaching for, and look back into my own experiences with cats I've had. This poem is called Tabby, and it goes like this. This brown tabby stretches her paws in the air, claws extended. She can almost reach that something moving in the air. Dust, molecules, aliens, whatever it is, I can't see it. She's gotten her fish on a pole, her blue dish, her rainbow rope, the coin she's pushed into her stash. She's mesmerized by the string circling her head, a sparkling Mobius strip. So I don't know if you've ever had a chance to see a cat, and that seems to be hunting something totally invisible. That's what I was alluding to when I said that whatever it is, dust, molecules, aliens, whatever it is, I can't see it. But this cat can see it. So that image of the magician, cat being able to see something that we're not seeing and actually reaching for it and chasing for it, I thought was a lovely and funny and kind of lighthearted look at the magician. Next card I wanted to look at is from the Golden Tarot by Kat Black. This came out, I think, around 2004, and is the first, I believe it's the first collage deck I got. This entire deck is collaged from Renaissance paintings, so a lot of them are taken from images that would have originally been having something to do with religion. And in this one particularly, I couldn't help but seeing the Jesus character in this magician. What's wonderful for me about this is like how humble that little table is in the woods. First of all, this magician is barefoot in the woods, low little table. The you can see the tools on the table, and he's surrounded by animals. And the animals are actually almost sort of circling him. I imagine them, almost being spinning around him in the way that that galaxy was spinning. That there is a magical thing going on here. Anyway, I was very inspired by this as a magician card. You can see the one hand up, the one hand down, but the one down is extended in blessing. It is quite lovely. So this poem is actually called Would That Jesus. This magician is doing something right. The animals gather around him. Quail, geese, rooster and falcon, rabbit, deer and fox, horse and cow, owl with ear tufts alert, lion and wolf, they stand by his side, float over his head, suspended in the golden light. He bends towards them, one hand extended to receive, the other to bless, his hair the color of their coats. His feet are bare beneath his fiery robe. The wooden table is low on the mossy floor. The knife is laid beside the simple tin cup, the clay ewer, a thin wand cut from a nearby tree. The coin of this realm is a blossoming flower. Would that Jesus had loved the animals so. I was brought up in a Catholic home, although I am no longer of that faith. And I think the thing that bothered me most when I went to Sunday school was we were talking about heaven and going to heaven when you die and so forth. And I said something about, my dogs, that I'll be happy to go to heaven to see, the dogs that I had as friends who had died. And the teacher said, oh no, dogs don't go to heaven. And I thought, what? How could it be heaven if there's no dogs? And at some point I remember thinking, why is there not more about the non-human world in the stories about Jesus? I would like more. I would like, we later on I ran into St. Francis of Assisi and so forth. But the non-human world, the animal world, is really missing, except in sort of symbolic ways, as the snake in the garden and, things like that, the whale that eats Jonah and so forth. But this kind of relationship, where you're both accepting and giving a blessing, where you are surrounded by the animals and part of that world somehow. Everything exists in relationship to what Europeans would call the natural world, or nature. We are all just part of it. And I felt that was something that was really missing in the Christian stories. So when I wrote this poem, I just thought, wow, wouldn't it have been nice if we'd had some stories about Jesus that were like this? So that's where that card came from. Now I want to look at one of the newer tarot decks I got actually just before writing this. I think I wrote several poems from this deck almost right away. And this one, I opened up this deck and saw this image and just really almost burst out laughing. It is such a wonderful take on the magician. And you can see here the power stance that he's in, earth and sky, and the four tools are there. But I don't want to say very much more about it. It does have the yellow background. It does have red and white roses, so you have the allusion to the red rose of passion and the white roses of innocence. So all of that is there. But this is a disco card and a very contemporary, card in that sense. I love that he's wearing red. I love the top knot with the lemniscate floating over his head. So I'm just going to go right ahead and read the poem. Disco. He takes the power stance, one hand pointing to sky, the other to earth. He dances with everyone. He is the center of the circle. Everything comes to him. A walking stick, a sparkling star, a good cup of coffee, a sharpened knife. Watch him dance. Anything might happen. So I don't know if any of you grew up going to dances. I'm, pretty old. So back in the 60s, we went to dances. Every Friday night or every Saturday night, we had, dances at the gym, and we actually had a dance club, under 18 dance club that we had. But in the 70s, there was, of course, the disco. If you have not seen that or are not familiar with the disco scene, watch Saturday Night Fever. You'll get such a great sense of it, and John Travolta plays the lead part, and that is really great. But this power stance on a disco floor is just something, I think actually John Travolta does the same stance in Grease when he's singing Summer Love at the very top of the bandstand. So those are two film references that you could take a look at to see that disco era, and then like a reference back to the 1950s. But he really is doing that disco stance because they did this in disco dance. So it's I don't know, like, is that just some natural thing we know, that to connect earth and sky is a powerful movement? And then just the continue of the movement that you have as a dancer, reaching like that. I love that his eyes are somehow looking at us, but also looking up, which I think is wonderful. The other thing I was going to say about the dances I went to when I was young is that a lot of times there would be somebody or some couple that was dancing particularly well, and the circle would form around them. But that was a really common thing. So eventually you'd have a whole circle of people watching a particular person, or a particular, in those days mostly it was a couple dancing. People didn't dance alone quite as much. People danced in groups, but very rarely. It wasn't sort of like what happened later with breakdancing and so forth, where it became much more individual oriented. So I think of him as, he dances with everyone. He's in the center of the circle, and then everything comes to him. I love it that the cup is not a chalice. It is a coffee cup. And if you are one of those people lucky enough to always be able to find a good cup of coffee, that's a gift. It's like being able to, my daughter-in-law is able to go into any parking lot, and she always can find a parking space somewhere near the door. I swear it is a gift. And I was thinking the same way about this, that, here are the tools around him, and he just got that candle lit in his hand. He's ready to go. But that cup of coffee is always available to him also, as well as the walking stick, the sparkling star, the sharpened knife. Whatever he needs will come to him. And also then the end of it is directions to us, watch him dance. Anything might happen. And of course, the fool on his journey, becomes the magician in this card. And that is the truth of it, isn't it? We take the step off the cliff, we find our tools, we don't know what's going to happen. Whatever it is, it will be magical. If you take a look at this slide, you can see the evolution of this card from the Rider-Waite-Smith as illustrated by Pamela Coleman Smith in 1909, where you have the magician stance, you have the table with the four tools, you have that bright yellow, almost garish background. To the Golden Tarot in 2003, the collage deck by Kat Black, who has the stance modified into sort of outstretched hands of blessing and receiving, and you have that gold background, very, very softened, but he is wearing the red robe. And then you have the Cat Tarot illustrated by Megan Lynn Cott, in which all three of these have the lemniscate, as you can see over their heads. The cat is reaching with that one paw. Interestingly, the fourth tool here is not the sword, but the rope, which I thought was an interesting change. I'm not sure what to think of the rope as something other than the sword as a tool. I'll give that more thought. But I do like that it's a rainbow rope. Somehow that seems like a queer element in this deck that I'm not sure was thought of as a queer deck. But the Magician card in This Might Hurt, which by Isabella Rotman, which is definitely a queer deck, which makes me want to say also about this magician, that this magician could also be a woman, if we wanted to see it that way. Absolutely. But look at how that stance completely echoes the Rider-Waite. It is the most like the Rider-Waite, and this came out in 2023. And you have all of the tools, but they are swirling around him. So, and of course the cup morphs from the chalice to the tin cup to the bowl to the coffee cup, and yet it is recognizably the magician. And this is what I love about studying comparative decks, and just being able to see the vision that different artists have brought, and how the very slight nuances that are slightly different in these cards. And so you can see that if you're doing a reading and a magician card comes up and you're like, I'm not quite sure like why that's there, how do I read this card? One thing that I do, if I'm not quite clear on it, I'll look at the magician from a number of different decks to see if there's some nuance of the meaning that I'm missing. And certainly you have a different nuance in each of these cards, including the very playful cat magician, the very compassionate Golden Tarot, and then this amazing power stance on the disco card. So I wanted to talk about that, as well as this yellow background that morphs into much more gentle, and then somehow that last one is a very powerful yellow, but it's not the garish yellow of the Rider-Waite-Smith, which I think a lot of people find objectionable, and which I find hard to look at as well. So I just wanted to add those little details in for you. Thanks. This is the last card that I have a poem for. It's from the Dreaming Way Tarot by Rome Choi, and it's another very contemporary take on the magician. And you can see from the image how very different it is. I love it that she's in this contemporary but very stylish outfit with the black jacket and the tuxedo shirt underneath it, her hands in her pocket. I love it also that she has gray hair. This is not, a young woman. This is someone who has a little bit of experience. And the lemniscate is not above her head, but if you look at her eyeglasses, you'll notice that they are the lemniscate. This is another amazing take on the magician, and the cup here, of course, is turned into an ice cream sundae cup, which I think is also delightful. So let me read you the poem, and then we'll talk a little bit more about it. Just thinking. Hands in the pockets of her black pants. She doesn't even have to touch her tools. Just thinking about them is enough to set them swirling. She wears her cropped black jacket with its silver buttons over a white tuxedo pleated blouse. Her gray hair is cut short. Bangs brush the tops of her glasses, the ones that look into infinity. The star inside the circle, the branch with its green leaf, the white sword, the ice cream sundae glass with its black polka dots. Behind her, dull leaves flutter in a dusty wind. She will turn them scarlet. And as I'm looking at the card, I'm thinking scarlet is her cheeks. She's got, very, very red cheeks. But I'm from New England. We're used to having the leaves all turn brilliant red in the fall. And for some reason, the artist here decided to put her against this almost wallpapery background of leaves. And I thought, oh, yeah, she can easily turn all those leaves red if she wants to. And that's what I would do. So when we put ourselves into the card. But isn't this amazing? She does not have to take the power stance. Her thoughts are so powerful that she can set all of her tools spinning just by thinking. That's how powerful she is as a magician. And I adored this because it is contemporary, because it is inclusive. We have a different age woman here. For one thing, a woman. I suppose it could be a guy. I don't know. I think you could look at this and you could say this could be a man as well. But for me, it's a woman. And I love the fact that she took the Lemnis Scott and turned them into the eyeglasses. So she's literally like looking through the glasses of infinity, which, again, this is a very advanced state of being a magician. If you've enjoyed this video, please look for the other videos that are going to be in this series. The first one is out, which is The Fool. There's also going to be one coming up called Three of Swords, which is it's just on that card, and it's not from the Major Arcana, but I couldn't help wanting to share it with you. I wrote it right after watching Lisa Papez's walkthrough of the Good Fortune Tarot. Thank you for coming along today with me on this journey, and I hope you'll continue it. Look forward to seeing you next time.